Good evening and welcome to NBC Nightly News. Today is Wednesday, March 25th, 1953. The big story, the trial of acclaimed Harlem Renaissance writer and activist Langston Hughes. Mr. Hughes has been accused of being a communist and appeared before the Senate Permanent Subcommittee of Investigations yesterday. The investigation is still ongoing, but throughout the course of the day of the first trial, Mr. Hughes was grilled extensively. But is there a reasonable cause to believe that Mr. Hughes is a communist? Tonight, on a very special feature, we will attempt to answer that question by examining the early life of Mr. Hughes, his ties to the Soviet Union, his artistic endeavors, and what some meanings in his poem could relate to. All this coming up shortly.
Look, here is the new Band-Aid plastic strip with new Super Stick. It sticks better than any other bandage. The proof? Take a dry egg at room temperature. Touch the egg with any other bandage. Brand X, brand Y, brand Z. Not one sticks. But a Band-Aid plastic strip with new Super Stick sticks tight instantly. Watch it again in slow motion. No pressure, yet we can lift the egg, even boil it. And the Band-Aid plastic strip never comes loose.
Maybe you don't want to broil eggs this way, but you do want the extra protection of Band-Aid plastic strips. They take better care of little cuts and scratches. They stay put.
Yes, even in hot, soapy dishwater. Neat, flesh-colored, almost invisible. Band-Aid plastic strips with new Super Stick stick better than any other bandage. Made only by Johnson & Johnson, the most trusted name in surgical dressings. Be sure you get Band-Aid plastic strips.
Langston Hughes was a prominent figure in the Harlem Renaissance, which took place in Harlem, New York, during the late 1920s. The Harlem Renaissance was a movement that cultivated African-American intellectual, literary, and artistic life. Hughes wrote mostly poetry, but that didn't stop him from dabbling in other forms of literary work, such as short stories, novels, essays, and plays. His work sought to honestly portray the everyday struggle of the average African-American family and sprinkled both the good and bad aspects of that throughout. One might then ask, how does this implicate Mr. Hughes as a communist? The short answer is that it doesn't. To further understand where Mr. Hughes first began being associated with communism, we need to travel back to the 1910s. As some might be unaware, the communist uprising in Russia during the height of the First World War capitulated the old regime and implemented a new system of government that was to be run by the working class for the working class. Things were looking especially bright during the 1920s and early 1930s. While the rest of the world succumbed to the Great Depression, the Soviet Union was perfectly fine. It was during this time that many famous African-American artists, among them Langston Hughes, traveled to the Soviet Union in hopes of understanding this new form of government. This is perhaps where we can first see Mr. Hughes' admiration for communism grow. He wrote that the daily papers picture the Bolsheviks as the greatest devils on earth, but I couldn't see how they are so bad if they had done away with race hatred and landlords, two evils that I know firsthand. Hughes, no doubt, faced discrimination from all angles while growing up, and upon touching down in the Soviet Union, he must have experienced what it was like to live in the United States as a white man, completely free of racial hardship. Can we really then blame him for taking some of the Soviets' ideas and adapting them into his works? Only time will tell. More when we come back.
We're going to use an ordinary garden variety peach with its short, close fuzz and tender skin, and a regular regimental hairbrush with its rough, tough bristles, to prove to you that the man-size Remington electric shaver will give you a close, comfortable shave, no matter how tender your skin, no matter how tough your beard. Look at this amazing demonstration. The Remington is so gentle that it can shave the short, close fuzz off a peach without harming its tender skin. And the Remington is so powerful that it can shave the bristles off a brush, bristles tougher than any beard. Remember the amazing demonstration of the peach and brush. For the close, comfortable shave you've always wanted, reach for the Remington Electric Shaver.
Throughout his career, Langston Hughes created a wide variety of poems. For the sake of time, we will only be going over a select few. We will examine these select few and look at key lines that may reveal how Langston Hughes really felt about communism. The first poem to be analyzed will be Children's Rhymes. Children's Rhymes is a poem that is contained within one of Mr. Hughes's most famous works of art, The Montage of a Dream Deferred. Montage is a collection of poems written by Hughes that explores the lives of the Black community living in Harlem, New York. It deals with racial inequality and suggests that the longer it goes on, the more fractured society will become. Children's Rhymes is situated near the beginning of the poem, and right away, it is distinctive because it has sections written normally, while some sections are written in italics. The non-italicized sections talk about how the author, in this case Mr. Hughes, reminisces on his childhood and all the fun and games he used to have as a child. However, in contrast to this, the italicized sections of the poem highlight how Hughes views the differences between white and black children. In the first italicized section, Hughes describes how a black child knows they can never be the president of the United States based simply on their skin color. Growing up, many children aspire to be the leader of our nation, but here Hughes is telling us that it is simply not the case for black children, nor is it reasonable for them to think that way. The American society, Hughes infers, will never let black people hold positions of power. In the next section, we explore this theme further, as we are told, "What don't bug them white kids sure bugs me. We know everybody ain't free." Once again, one only has to infer here to understand the message that Mr. Hughes is getting at. Hughes believes that white children will never have to worry about being victims of racism, violence, or discrimination because they are white. In a white-dominated society, they can be whoever they want to be and choose whatever they want to do. Black children, on the other hand, grow up in this extremely racist environment that treats them as lesser people simply based on how they look. They must come to terms with these facts early and recognize that their life will be one of struggle, and that instead of having open doors and paths, all those variety of ways will be closed to them just because of who they are. And while this piece of information may not necessarily indicate which way Mr. Hughes falls with regards to communism, it will be critical for later understanding some of the passages. Hughes says that the Constitution, while good on paper, is actually failing Black Americans because they are not free in the same capacity that white Americans are. The Constitution is failing because Mr. Hughes believes that the American society in which we live is not designed for people to be equal. More when we come back.
Look sharp, feel sharp, be sharp and listen, mister. How are you fixed for blades? Do you have plenty? How are you fixed for blades? You better check. Please make sure you have enough, cause a worn out blade makes shaving mighty tough. How are you fixed for blades? Better look, Gillette blue blades I need.
The next poem to be taken into consideration is titled A New Song. In this poem, according to the first line, Hughes speaks in the name of millions of African Americans across our nation. He reminds them of the past traumas that they have endured, such as being beneath the slaver's whip and when the lyncher's rope hung around their neck. Towards the end of the poem, he calls the African American population to arms, exclaiming, "Revolt, arise. The black and white world shall be one, the workers' world." Here's where we begin to see the communist ideas permeate Hughes's poetry. Some viewers may not remember, but the working class of the USSR rose up towards the end of the First World War and overthrew the ruling class. During this time period of rebuilding, the Soviet Union focused on the rapid expansion of their agriculture and industrial sections. To do this, they needed workers because they did not have enough at the time to reach their current goals. They viewed American agricultural and industrial workers as foreign experts and campaigned themselves as a land of equality and opportunity. This would no doubt have been appealing to African Americans, as they suffered severe racial abuse during this time period. And this is possibly what Hughes is referencing with his words towards the end of the poem. The Soviet Union was known as a working class nation, and it is telling that Hughes uses the words revolt and arise to describe how he aims to accomplish the goal of a worker's world. This seems to parallel the working class's rise to power in the Soviet Union, and it also suggests that by doing so, the black working class will create a world where they are able to work side by side with white workers and not be oppressed.
Fun is a little child watching you make a party from a package. Pillsbury Deluxe Golden Yellow Cake. Fun is frosting, fluffy, white, swirling, high. Pillsbury, too. Light the candles of fun on your golden yellow cake. Pillsbury Deluxe.
Oh, boy! That looks good.
Touch it. Taste it. Extra shortening makes it tenderly moist. Brings out the flavor, the fun. Wasn't your Pillsbury golden yellow cake fun while it lasted?
The next poem to be analyzed will be titled Park Bench, and in this poem, Mr. Hughes gives us an account of the extreme wealth and extreme poverty that permeate American society. The speaker in this poem seems to be addressing someone who lives in Park Avenue, a wealthy district. The speaker resides on a park bench, clearly homeless. The speaker speaks of a great distance between the two people, but clearly it is not a physical one. It is a wealth one. The speaker begs for a dime to purchase his dinner, while the person residing in Park Avenue has a butler and a maid. Communism abolished the existence of class distinctions in the Soviet Union, and instead there is only one class, the working class. Perhaps this is what Mr. Hughes is alluding to here, the unfairness of American society, while also hinting that there should be a system of government that treats everyone equally. This would be appealing to Hughes because a lot of the poorer areas in our nation are inhabited by African Americans, and with the abolishment of the class structure and the institutionalization of one class, everyone would have the same amount of wealth and living conditions.
The most effective mouthwash you can buy to stop bad breath germs. Let's say these G's are the germs, breeding in your mouth and throat. Other mouthwashes reduce the number of germs, but moments later, new ones start growing back to threaten your breath. Micron is different. It not only kills germs on contact, but it keeps the number of germs much lower, much longer. It's been proved more effective hours longer than any other mouthwash, so you can feel safer hours longer with Johnson & Johnson's new Blue Micron, most effective mouthwash you can buy to stop bad breath germs.
Welcome back. There is one more poem we will be going over tonight, and it is titled If You Would. The context of who Mr. Hughes is talking to here is very crucial in understanding the poem. The understanding of this poem stems from the idea that Mr. Hughes is talking to the poor and working classes of America, comprised mostly of blacks, but also a few whites. The poem starts by addressing the things that the lower classes could stop if they just rose up and revolted. Listed are the factory whistle, nuclear bombs, mining machinery, jailhouse keys, and loaded battleships. These are all things that keep the lower classes down as they are forced to work to earn a living, making their bosses richer while they stay stuck in poverty. However, since there are so many of them, they have the power to stop this. They can abolish the factory system and free themselves from the control of the upper class. They also have the power to end the nuclear threat, also war, dangerous mining, and mass incarceration. Here, Langston Hughes seems to be calling to a class primarily made of blacks to rise up and end the things that are keeping them down and also plaguing the modern world. All the things described are a byproduct of capitalist societies. Yes, the Soviets do have such things, but Mr. Hughes seems to be here saying that there's a distinction between the two countries in how they use institutions like factories and mines, especially with the workers that work there. The poem ends on a very somber note, as Hughes is almost frustrated that the working class in America refuses to rise up like their Russian counterparts and end the tyrannical reign of those in charge of our country. He lists all the bad things that capitalism causes and says, "You could if you would." Mr. Hughes is here expressing his resentment towards the middle class of America, and arguably it is here where we can make the strongest claim that he does support a communist uprising in America, for he wishes the poorer classes would rise up and abolish all the evils that the rich class has installed in America. But what do you, the viewer, think? The trial is still ongoing, but whatever the outcome may be, it should not take away from the fact that Langston Hughes is a renowned poet. He struggled and persevered through many hardships and built his legacy from the ground up. Good night to you all, and we will see you at the same time, same channel tomorrow evening.